Can you hear the music in the background? I'm in kind of a noisy environment, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time for today's feed. But I'm excited to share a little bit. I've been coaching, as you know, quite a bit while I've been in New York. And really been thinking a lot about radical self-acceptance and how to share the principles with you since I've been here because they're so crucial to life and well-being. Can you guys hear the music in the background? Let me know. I think I can see your chats. If somebody, I'm just curious if you hear the rhythm, so I'm in my groove. So let's talk about radical self-acceptance and sexuality and sexual trauma specifically. Hey Sonia, how's it going? Where are you? Where are you watching in from? Oh, you just hear noise. Okay, good to know. That's too bad. It's a nice groove, but it's a little bit noisy. I just needed to get out of the heat and get someplace quiet because it's a pretty serious topic. So hopefully you can hear me well enough. Good, that's good. So we're going to talk about radical self-acceptance and sexual trauma. Specifically, it's a really intense issue, and I think the reason I want to talk about it is just because I'm just shocked at like the amount of sexual trauma as I'm moving around the city and talking to people and just talking about life and what they're dealing with, and it's just unbelievable. It's like everybody has stories of sexual trauma, and I think part of it is because we live in a culture that really doesn't look at sexuality in a realistic way on any level. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. Hey Ashley. So it's like trauma that isn't, that we don't talk about just ends up being stuff that sits behind the scenes. Hey Chelsea, welcome. And everybody can hear me okay? I know it's a little bit noisy in the background, but I just want to make sure you can hear me because it's going to be a fairly intense topic today. So I want to make sure everybody's good to go. Hey Brandon. So, so I'm moving around the city, and okay, good, thank you, awesome. So I'm moving around the city, and as I'm talking to people, having fairly, that's just kind of what I do. I have, good, thank you. I am able to go deep with people pretty quickly, which I really like. Like it's kind of super cool, and so I've been finding out things about people that are just kind of shocking, and yet again today. I was doing some coaching and just having kind of a random conversation, and it really, like, the level of sexual trauma that is going on in people's lives is just shocking. And the reason is because we don't really have a framework, A, to talk about sex, B, we don't have a framework to accept the disowned parts of ourselves. So the disowned parts of ourselves are the selves that, those are those parts inside of us where we're like, oh, well, I couldn't possibly do that. I can't accept this part of myself. And so what happens is a lot of parts of our sexual psyche get relegated to porn. That's where we're getting our education about what's right and wrong and what's normal. And of course, like that's like the equivalent of saying I'm going to learn about driving by watching The Fast and the Furious. It just doesn't work. And so what's happening is people have these parts, these disowned parts of their psyche that they're just like, oh my God, if people knew this about me, they wouldn't love me or accept me. And so what ends up happening is that if you're one of the people who's like really repressing your sexuality, what ends up happening is that this stuff can leak out in really weird ways. And what I mean by that is I'm walking around the city I see women walking around very kind of like, like in a lot of shame and in a lot of like kind of toughness. And then I see men behaving really bizarrely, and I would say inhumanely, in kind of the approach in which they're like, needing to be vocal about their attractions in just kind of creepy ways. And so it creates this, like, it continues this trauma. Whereas if you're like owning those aspects of your psyche where you realize, like, wait a minute, this person is a person. This person is a human being. They have thoughts and dreams and desires. They have things they want to do. They're not just a body. Or in the case of some of the dudes, I mean, even those dudes, they're not just assholes, but they're relating in like this very weird way, in a very inhumane way. And I think part of that is because we're also inhumane to our own sexual desires inside of us. So part of why I wanted to bring this up with the radical self-acceptance is most of us have been traumatized sexually one way or another. It's a very common thing. Our boundaries haven't been respected. That's why the next class I'm going to do in September is going to be around boundaries. And our boundaries haven't been honored, and therefore our inner deepest psyche hasn't been honored. And then these very vulnerable parts of us get exposed and taken advantage of by people who really have their head up their asses. And when I watch some of how people are interacting and how they're dealing with their sexuality and their attraction, it really calls forth this idea of radical self-acceptance, where you say, like, okay, well, what if I accepted myself as a sexual human being? And I move through life not as if, like, I see somebody and I'm turned on, and therefore I need to, like, vomit on that person with my energy and then get pissed off if they don't respond the way I want them to, which is a lot of how I see the interactions going. Like, it's very bizarre to me. But if we were to just accept and cultivate our own sexual energy. So, as many of you know, I am really all about feeling good in this moment. Like, what can you do to cultivate feeling good in your body in this moment? Because that feeling good in your body right now, right in this moment, if I'm cultivating that energy, so I use that with breath, I use that with sound. So we can all do this together. You can take a moment and you can say, okay, what do I need to do to feel good in my body right now? So right now, I am going to imagine something delicious. I'm going to bring that into my meditative psyche. Okay, there's sort of two types of meditation. There's the very rigid, disciplined meditation, which has its place. Like the Vipassanas and the, like, transcend your ego and all that stuff. And then there's, like, the pleasure-oriented meditation, which also focuses your mind and can evoke a lot of energy in your body. So I will think about something delicious, and I'll take a deep breath and focus my energy and bring that to the forefront of my mind, to my third eye. And of course that makes me smile really big. And now I'm feeling good in my body. And now I'm going to spread that energy throughout my body so that my energy is free to move. So let's just do that for a minute or two, just really taking a minute to feel good. Like, what can you do right this second to feel good in your body? What can you imagine? Maybe there's a food that you really want. Like there is Magnolia Bakeries right in the neighborhood here, and frosting all over my body, yum. So that already makes me feel good. So now I'm cultivating good chemistry in my brain. And of course, this is the beautiful thing. We've got this incredible simulator that is the human brain. There you go. Think about your girlfriend. That's always a good one. You can think about your girlfriend covered in cupcake batter. You can mix metaphors. That's the beautiful thing about this brain. Like we can really take these beautiful images and we can create. Yes, right. Yes, Ashley. You have to remember to do this more often because in the face of whatever bullshit is going on, and life is constantly throwing bullshit our way, if you're focusing your mind, right? If you're focusing your mind and you're saying, okay, I'm going to focus on something that I really want or something that makes me feel good, that is what I call my no-fly zone. Okay, and I'm going to be doing a whole thing on no-fly zone in the class, in the RSA class, but I'm going to call that the NFZ, the no-fly zone. The no-fly zone is my pleasure factor. So I'm not going to let anybody fuck with my well-being. And if I do, let's just say, because sometimes life happens, if that does happen, I'm going to reset my system with this technique. So I'm going into my incredible 3-pound simulator. I'm imagining things that make me feel good. That is my meditation. Now, already my entire chemistry has changed. And in this changing of chemistry, I can now begin to look at even the disowned parts of myself. So even in regard to like sexual trauma, I can, with me feeling abundantly delicious, I can kind of touch into, I call this kind of like reaching out your little kitty paw and just kind of touching your vulnerability or your disowned self, the disowned parts, and just touching them very gently, very kindly and sweetly. And it's like, oh, okay, here's this part that I'm afraid of. And maybe you can only do that for a couple seconds. But then once you do, you touch them and you bring them back into your space of wholeness. So I'm coming back to a space of wholeness, of well-being. And I'm coming back to my meditative symbol, in this case, whatever that is, your lover, or your, some delicious thing, whatever it is that brings you back to that, well-being. So I'm essentially titrating my trauma with things that feel good. So I begin to take these two things, like maybe something that's super disempowering, but I'm so filled up in my cup that when these two things come together, they sort of neutralize. And that's really what I want to get to when I'm dealing with trauma, and specifically sexual trauma. So the key concept today is remembering to come back to what your meditation is, and you just have to do that. And I love to meditate on things that are pleasurable, because pleasure can be as powerful of a motivator as pain. I mean, more motivating, in fact. You'll do more things out of pleasure. How many times have you walked someplace extra because you wanted that, I just want to go a little bit further and I want to get that delicious thing? We're very pleasure motivated creatures. A lot of people focus on the pain part. I'll just, hit you with a switch and motivate you. But if I can learn to cultivate pleasure as a general concept, move in that direction, and then cultivate feeling good in my body, as I cultivate that feeling, I can now have space. Yes, a juicy nectarine. There you go. I can now cultivate that deliciousness and titrate or touch into the parts of me that are disowned. In other words, parts of my psyche that I'm afraid of, or parts that have suffered some abuse or trauma. And so I'm balancing those two pieces out on a regular basis, and that way I can stay in kind of my general sense of well-being. All of this stuff that we're doing, even the idea of radical self-acceptance, is to come to a sense of homeostasis or well-being as a general state of being. Well-being. So my no-fly zone is if I'm keeping my own psyche in my juiciness. As I move down to the street, when people are being bizarre, it's irrelevant because I'm in my own sense of well-being. if I'm cultivating my sense of well-being, I'm not in a needy place. I'm not in a place where I'm like, oh my God, save me. I need you. It's more like I'm just feeling good. And then if I connect with somebody, then I'm connecting with them out of my good feeling. And now we amp each other up. Now we have this thing where I'm feeling good, which brings you up, and then you're feeling good, which brings me up. And so we can be in relationships and friendships and frameworks and, relationships with our partners and our lovers and our friends that are overall uplifting and pleasure oriented and kindness oriented. And instead of being abusive about like trauma, because everybody has some, and we act as if traumatizing somebody about their trauma is going to make them better, and this is incorrect. This perception is incorrect. It's just plain wrong. But by treating ourselves with radical self-acceptance, which generates kindness, if I have kindness in my own psyche, then that kindness creates a sense of well-being, and then I can treat other people more kind because I'm not beating the shit out of myself inside of myself. So when it comes to little tender things inside of you, sexual trauma, abuse, physical trauma, emotional trauma, if I'm already cultivating pleasure, number one, and then in that pleasure, I'm touching in and titrating, you are welcome, actually. If I'm titrating with like my already deliciousness and sweetness and my own inner kindness, by definition, I'm going to be more kind to the intimate people in my life. And out of that kindness generates more kindness. It actually impacts your psyche. So think of it like this. If I can communicate within myself clearly, then I can communicate with somebody else. If I can communicate with somebody else, then they can communicate with me. And suddenly we have this climbing ladder of more, like the opposite of pleasure is more pleasure. The opposite of feeling good is feeling even better. And suddenly I'm on this ladder of radical self-acceptance and feeling good in my body. So does anybody have any questions about that so far? I want to see if there's anything that's on your mind or anything that you want to share about that thus far. And I'm going to dance in the meantime while I'm waiting. Share that beat of love. I want to rock with you. Okay, I don't see any questions, so that's fine. Oh, here we go. Oh, sure. Absolutely. It is my pleasure. Cassandra, yeah, I think it's, in the course, I'm a little bit, I decided to take my time. I was originally going to run the Radical Self-Acceptance course this week, but I decided it was more important to kind of really get all the pieces together, so I'm doing that now. Like, I want to make sure I've got that, because I think understanding and having a tool to move forward in is far more important than just like a bunch of knowledge. So today, I'm going to give everybody some life work. I want you to move ahead and think of two things. Number one, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, go ahead, Cassandra. What's your fire away? I'm going to dance while I'm definitely open to other conversation or realms, for sure. But I'll go on with the homework while you're thinking about while you're writing your next piece. So the life play is to say, okay, is there something in myself that I can gently touch today? Maybe some disowned part of myself. I don't care how shadowy or dark it is or whatever. Is there some part that I can touch with my own well-being? Okay? Is there some part, like disowned part of myself that I can touch after I cultivate my own well-being. So in other words, I generate a beautiful state of flow and awareness, and then I touch that little part. And even if I touch it for like 1/100th of a second, that's amazing, you know? Okay, let's see. Brandon, you have a question. So why do people behave cruelly and judgmental towards each other? Don't they know it's better to build up? Yes. Well, oh, thank you, Daria. You know, so here's the thing, Brandon. This is a much deeper issue. But we are all formatted in what I call game one. We're all formatted in a binary. Everybody who's been born is formatted in a binary. And the binary is basically, you already know what it is. It's just basically good and bad. That's how pretty much the entire world is formatted. Any spiritual system, any cult, any religion is basically going to define what the terms of good and bad are. So we've all come up with a kind of system of good, bad, right, wrong, but we have all inherited a system where it's punishment and reward. So punishment is bad, you know, punishment for bad behavior, and positive reinforcement for good behavior. But our culture and our religious thinking and our belief systems in general is much more around punishment. That's the system we're in. The entire legal system, the entire law and the court system is all based on punishment reward. I was out the other night and watching people just scream at their kid. I told you don't do that, guys. So we're very much around punishment, and because mommy and daddy were punishing with us, or uncle or family members or school or Catholic church or whatever, who really have refined the whole punishment reward system. We get structured in that binary, and because we don't question it would be like me questioning the wallpaper or the ceiling. We just don't do it. We don't look up and go, why is that made out of wood anyway? It's just so part and parcel of life. So what ends up happening is that we adopt this good, bad punishment reward system, and that's just our operating system. So then people always say, oh, I've got some constructive criticism for you. But if I really questioned, when was the last time somebody gave you some criticism that was actually constructive? If you want to get into a fight with somebody, just tell them the fucked up things they've done. Tell them they're wrong about something. It just doesn't work. It's there's no such thing as constructive criticism. That's why I don't teach that way. All of my teaching is just gentle nudges, because I'm interested in long-term change, gentle long-term change over time. This short-term punishment reward stuff just sucks, and it doesn't work. So Brandon, we can talk more about that, but if you go onto YouTube, or if you do some search. Oh, you know what, Joe? It's on my Facebook page, and I'll also put it into my group page. But I really talked extensively about the 5 games in that, and if you understand the 5 games, you'll really understand how to break that punishment reward cycle, so that you move into a generative framework where you're being generative to your friends and your lovers and the people close to you, and criticism, constructive or otherwise, is just not part of what you're doing. You're just how can I create value and add and build this person up, and in the process of building them up, build up myself, because I just don't teach with blame and shame. It's just such a waste of time, and so long-term ineffective, and yet that is the tool that humans use. Okay, so Cassandra, let me just go here. How can we individually and collectively contribute to the paradigm shift of love and unity consciousness? Wow. Okay, Cassandra, I'm going to plead the Fifth Amendment on this, just because I've been blabbing along here for a while. I will pick up this topic, but the short skinny is, it has to start with you. It has to start with you, okay? Which means that you have to... My pleasure, man. it has to start with you. So if I'm in punishment reward in my own psyche, then I'm going to be in punishment and reward out in the world. So the question is, can you cultivate, using the tool of radical self-acceptance, can you cultivate your own sense of well-being so you're not using punishment and reward to get stuff done in your own life? In other words, the flow state that I speak of, the flow state is like a neutral state. I'm not using punishment and reward, but rather I am. I'm in a state of being. And it's a sense of well-being, ideally, because I'm cultivating the things that make me feel delicious and good in my life. Like that. A little bit of breath, a little bit of like symbolic imagery, and I'm like, boom, I'm right there. So if I'm cultivating my own well-being, if I'm not living in fear, but rather my sense of well-being, and I live in a state of like general surrender to life. Like I know I'm not gonna live forever, so I don't worry about it. It's like I could finish this broadcast and get run over by a truck, and that's the end. So I don't really like. There's nothing really to worry about. I mean, in life, you sort of like you make it or you don't. You know what I mean? Like. Whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen, and you're either gonna survive it or you're not. So worrying about it is hardly worth it. And one day, regardless of the circumstances, you won't survive. So I don't spend a lot of time on I don't really worry about much. It's like, why? Life ends in death. Like, that's what happens. No big deal. So I'm very relaxed in my psyche. So Cassandra, the real big jujitsu, the big Aikido shift here is to just realize that if I'm treating myself kindly and sweetly, that will change the world. Because I'm not out there with fear. I'm not out there with judgment. I'm not out there with shame and blame and looking to find fault in everything. Because I don't have that going on inside of myself, so I don't have to reflect that out back on the world. And that's where it gets really effed up, because if I'm already like, you haven't made it far enough, you haven't done enough, you're not, you haven't made enough, you're not this, you're too that, blah, 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 all this negative talking to yourself and thinking within yourself, using your symbolic brain to like beat yourself up, that's like eating razor blades. It just doesn't make sense. So what I want to do, and Cassandra, this is the thing that's really important to understand. You're probably not treating yourself with the kindness that you need to be. That's just the truth. Because we're not trained in that. So you, as an adult mammal, have to learn how to train yourself. Right? And that is the thing. Like, you train yourself in that kindness. I have a thing where when I'm teaching, and thanks, Cassandra, I'm glad. I'm happy to hear that, because, it's like, I have a thing that I do, which is I ask a question. If I'm going to ask a question, if I'm going to ask a question of myself, I'm not going to be like, why am I not more successful? Fuck that. No, not interesting. The question I want to ask is something like, why am I so fucking hot and sexy? Why do I look so good with a shaved head? Why do I think such delicious thoughts? Why are my meditations so amazing? Why am I so fucking hot? Diana, why am I so delicious? I just don't understand why I'm so yummy. Now, do you see what I'm saying? We are, why do I have so much potential? Well, I would go a step further, Brandon, because potential is like future. I would say, like, why am I amazing? Why am I so amazing? It's beautiful. Like, man, why am I so amazing? I am so amazing. And right now I'm just riffing. Like, I'm going to go with your belief and put it in my head. And I'm going to say, like, why am I so amazing? I'm going to say so amazing because, like, I am brilliant, because I'm sensitive, because I'm compassionate, because I'm open-hearted, because I'm vulnerable, because I have so much space for myself to just be myself. Like, I have so much space to be me. Like, I love the most unlovable parts of myself. That's why I'm so fucking awesome. And that way I'm not so hard on other people. Somebody I was talking with yesterday, and they were talking about like how they were just feeling like, oh my God, I'm so ashamed of this part of myself. And I'm so fucking awesome because I can love that part of a person. I can just be like, I totally get you. I can totally love you. And yeah, and that's what I'm saying, Brandon. Like, it's radical self-acceptance. That's exactly right, Ashley. It is radical self-acceptance. That's why you're so awesome, because you can radically accept who you are at the deepest core levels of your being, which makes you much more kind. So, Chelsea, how do you find the balance between self-love and care and narcissism? Well, I mean, that's very easy. So narcissism is a closed loop. And that's really how do you, that is like a narcissistic framework is not open. So in other words, I'm so fucking awesome, but I also know my fundamental belief about the world is that I know that I don't know. So yeah, you want to, Vera, exactly. I radically accept my dirty birdie self. And in fact, I would probably remove being careful about words like dirty, especially around sex. Like, I am just like sexually open and delicious and into it, and radically accept all of those parts of myself, even the parts that are unacceptable. So, being really, because, there's a lot of like subtle morality in words we use. So I just want to be like the dirty piece. Like, I don't think sex is dirty. I don't care what you're doing or what you want to do. I just think it's fucking awesome. Like, if we're adults and we can do it, awesome. As long as we're consenting, like with consenting other people, it's a beautiful world. So that's kind of the, well, great. If you like dirty, awesome, right? Like if you own dirty, like some people claim that. It's just like, I'm dirty and I love it, which I do too. So I'm like, yeah. But not everybody's in that. So that's those are tweaks you make for you. So mainly, Chelsea, the main thing I want to say here is like narcissism means you're a closed loop, right? I'm in a closed loop in my life. And if I'm in a closed loop, in other words, I'm not open to feedback, then that's where I get into troubles with like, getting like, oh, I know it all. That's not the case. I know 100% that I don't know, but I can still be awesome. Like, I'm okay with not knowing. I spend most of my life not knowing much of anything. I spend most of my life going like, I don't have a fucking clue, which is really funny when I'm coaching or I get up and I'm leading a workshop and I'm like, somebody's like, well, what's the answer? And I'm like, I don't know. If you want all the answers, you go to church. That's kind of how I feel. Just go to church and you can get everything, man. They'll tell you everything. Yeah, because they know everything, but I don't. And I'm okay with that. That's part of radical self-acceptance. And that's part of how I never come from a place of righteousness, because I know that I don't have a fucking clue. And now, will some people be intimidated? Absolutely, right? Because most people are like self-comparing. So they're like, oh, well, you're more sexually expressed than me, or you're less, or, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. Holy smokes. She was like, I did a little research on this person, and I think that person's a whore, like something like that. And I was like, and she was looking at me like, don't you agree with me? And I was like, how, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you, like, what? Like, that's somebody who thinks they know everything, and therefore, when they think they know everything, they can tell other people and judge them and shame them and blame them. So it's like really knowing it's really knowing, like, I don't know, and I'm okay with that. You know, like, I don't know. I don't know what's best for you. I do know that you can use a tool like radical self acceptance, or you can use a tool like really modifying your brain chemistry however you want to do. That's the main thing I'm saying. So I'm not like, narcissism just is, you can't hear information from the outside world. And you know what? I can't tell you how many people are like that. I mean, it's crazy how intense that is. Yeah, and of course, knowledge gives people the illusion of power, right? That's the thing. It gives people the like, oh, I know this and I know that. But it is totally an illusion. You know, I remember when I was first teaching this work, and people would say, like, I feel like you're taking away my safety net. And I'm like, I can't take away something that doesn't exist to begin with. You know, it's like Wile E. Coyote. You go running off the edge of the cliff, and you think you're on the cliff, and then you look down one day, and it's like, whoop. Well, you know what? That was always the case. It's a delusion to think we know everything, but that in fact is what narcissism is. That's why narcissistic people are so hard to be around, because it's a closed loop. It doesn't matter what you say. They're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then they just stay with their position. So that's like the antithesis of the sweetness and kindness that I have in my own being. Okay? And that's why I say, like my boundary inside of my psyche is very porous. I am so comfortable with not knowing. But just because I don't know doesn't mean I don't deserve to feel fucking amazing and love my dirty birdie, which I do, Vera. You know, I'm so okay with this. And, you know, it's funny to be like, quote unquote, a spiritual teacher who talks so much about sex and dirty sex to begin with, you know, like, because these are so part and parcel to our sense of well-being and our, you know, and it's funny, like, how many quote unquote spiritual people I've met over the years who find out a little bit like I'm kind of pretty open-minded. That's funny. Very open-minded. And then they'll come and grab me and whisper and like say, they'll be like, is it normal that I like to like suck on toes? And I'll, you know, be like, yeah, it's normal. It's so normal, right? But they're just so ashamed, you know, because they have this idea that spirituality and sexuality are separate things. So radical self-acceptance is like really owning the depth of who we are at the core of our being, and using our well-being, using our dirty birdie self, using our trauma, even our sexual trauma, to cultivate well-being. And this is such a powerful move, and that is the essence of radical self-acceptance. Because, as I said when I started this broadcast, which seems like it was like a year ago, me hammering on, but you know, that everybody has trauma, everybody has sexual trauma, emotional trauma. I mean, it's crazy. And as I'm maneuvering out in the world and I'm talking to people and having these very deep and vulnerable conversations sometimes with strangers, and it's kind of cool because they're strangers, and you know, there is this sense of maybe I will never see this person again. There's a deep, sweet vulnerability that comes out that I just love. You know, I had a conversation on a stoop yesterday, just sitting on a stoop with somebody, and it just blew my mind. Like, I was like, wow. I was so moved by just what this person was willing to share. And part of it was just, you know, this guy was talking about just how abusive his dad was, and how that really has made like relationships super difficult. And I was like, well, dude, just own the abusive parts and the parts that have been self-abusing you. Just own those so that you don't have to keep acting that out over and over again just because that's what daddy taught you. You know, mommy and daddy taught us all kinds of crazy shit that is just not that great, you know? And we act as if they're somehow, you know, shouldn't be questioned, or somehow they had it right. And it's like, they're just people. They're just people. They have no, they don't have any superpowers other than just being a parent. I mean, I think that in itself sometimes can be like amazing. So that's all I got today. I want to share one other thing. I will talk about this more in another video. In fact, I'm going to make a note right now, which is, this haiku that you can have your childhood. And I'm going to leave on this. I'm not going to answer this question right now. You can have your childhood, and I am making that note. You can have your childhood, or you can have relationships, but you can't have both. So, the childhood delusion that mommy and daddy were great, and, my childhood was amazing. Like, you can have that, and you can keep that intact, or you can have relationships, but you can't have both. At some point, you have to break up the concretized delusion of like, mommy and daddy were good and they did the best and blah, blah, blah. And you just have to start dealing with the reality. That's very powerful. So we're going to talk about that. So childhood or relationships, pick one. Because when we are in relationships acting out our trauma, they suck. Truly. And so you really have to make this move into adulthood. Exactly, Ashley. Choose relationships, man. Like, why keep like the, this kind of like delusional state of like, Disneyland. Yeah, it's interesting, Diana. It's like, it will blow your mind. I'm going to go into that. I'm not sure when I'm going to do that. I mean, definitely remind me. Will somebody please be responsible for reminding me to talk about that? Because I really need to do an entire piece on that. It's really important and powerful. But just the thought, just planting the seed is really, yes, thank you. Thank you, Audrey. So let's see here. Let me just see what else. Yeah, positive thoughts and dirty touch can shift mountains. Melanie, who is all the way from, where are you right now, Melanie? Are you home? That is beautiful. Positive thought. I am quoting you on that. This is what Melanie said, everybody, and I fucking love it. Positive thoughts with a dirty touch can shift mountains and bring so much pleasure. Yes. That is beautiful. So, Melanie is in Switzerland. So Switzerland is in the house. So, hey, everybody, I'm going to go soon. But I just want to say thank you. And, this is a deep topic, and I had to talk about it because I swear it is like the 10th conversation I've had since I've been in New York where people start sharing about abuse in their lives, and it just blows my mind. So, we all need that. So, we will, to be continued. Please subscribe. I'm going to need people to shift over because I'm really running out of space on my Facebook page. So if you can head over and start subscribing and or liking. I'm going to do Lawrence Lanoff's Tantra X. So if you just search Tantra-X, that'll take you to my, essentially my professional page. And I'm going to start posting all these videos in there. So Jamaica in the house. Oh, you're in Jamaica. Yes. And do please share this with anybody who you feel like could get some benefit from this, because I do want to start expanding the conversation, and we just need more people to speak openly about these things and directly without the bullshit, man. I am just, I realized I wrote something the other day and I was just reading it this morning and I was like, I am like your no bullshit guide to spirituality and sexuality. I don't know if that's brandable, but that is what I am. So I just got to figure out how to say that without people wanting to rip out their eyeballs and run and grab their genitals and run for the hills. So anyway, love you guys. Thanks so much for sharing. Brandon, thank you for the love. I appreciate it, and I'm very happy to share these things. I mean, it really makes me happy, and I really want to up-level the conversation. This is my way of really changing the discussion from this kind of fear-based, sexually shamey, blamey culture into something that is much more life-affirming, and pleasure and sexuality and touch and communication, these and relationship. These are things that just make us feel good. So I'm going to go out with Diana Ross. You probably can't hear her, but I can. And I'm going to take a moment to get my groove on. And I'm thinking about it on my mind, 'cause I love you. I got the sweetest hangover. I don't want to get over. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea. I will see you all soon. I don't want to get over. Diana, Jamaica, Switzerland. Everybody, I'll see you soon. I'm going to dance my way out of this broadcast. Get your groove on. Pleasure. More pleasure. I'll see you soon. Woo!